you. So I know a lot of you guys know me, I know a lot of you guys don't. I'm Vivek Pandit, I'm 16 years old, and I'm a junior at Grapevine High School. And I'm here to talk about how the youth can get involved in HAF and my personal story of how I got involved, what I've done, different opportunities HAF has offered me, and hopefully by the end of this talk, inspire the youth here to join, become a member, and hopefully all you parents out there to tell your kids about this wonderful organization. So, my story started as a freshman. My dad brought it up. I was taking my first AP class, AP Human Geography. And in this class, we came across the World Religion Unit. And I had read ahead like a good student. I read ahead. And I saw the Hinduism section. Okay, Christianity was a couple pages, 4 or 5 pages. Islam had about 2 or 3. Hinduism had 3 or 4 paragraphs. And so I read it, and I realized that there was no explanation to anything, and there was a lot of false information, and my dad showed you some of it. And so I came back the next day and told my teacher, I said, I was looking ahead, and are you going to be teaching Hinduism based off the textbook? She goes, yeah, you guys are supposed to read it, and that's how I teach it. And I said, well, is it okay if I can teach your classes? And she said, what do you mean? And I was like, well, can I go home, give me 2 weeks, I can make a presentation and teach your classes and teach all the students about Hinduism properly. And she said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Less work for me, go ahead. I said, all right. So I went home, made a presentation, and I taught 7 classes. It was about a 45-minute talk. It was like one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'd never done it before. And so I gave a talk to all of them. And at the end, students in high school do this thing where they pretend to listen to teachers sometimes. And I wasn't sure the feedback I was going to get, but I realized about 95% of the kids, if not all of them, they were listening 100%. And at the end, they gave me incredible feedback. They said, you know what, Vivek, I wish our teacher could do something like that. I'm like, oh, thank you. So that's when I realized that kids actually do want to learn, especially on something like Hinduism, something they really don't know about. They're intrigued by unique information. And so, just to give you another quick example, just 2 weeks ago, me and my football team were on a bus going to the Fort Worth game, and on the way there, a kid asked me, hey, do you believe in God? I was like, yes, I do. And so I gave him just like a 2-minute, explanation, and all of a sudden, I kept getting more questions. And it took about 45 minutes to get there, and I had to stop talking because our game was about to start. And for the entire bus ride, I'd given them a talk and lecture about Hinduism, and all of them had enjoyed it. And that's when I realized that, even my football team cares about stuff like that. And so that's when I got introduced to HAF. And when I first came into HAF, I was introduced to the curriculum reform, the textbook reform that my dad was talking about. And in that, I realized that, I feel like I have an impact because they're trying to change textbooks in high school. And I'm the audience. I'm the high school student that's getting affected. So I knew I could have some input. So that's when I came and I learned about, the whole project and what they were doing. And that's when I was introduced to the Hinduism 101. Because I knew they were going to make a difference. I just didn't know, what were they going to write or how were they going to make the difference. And so I know they touched on Hinduism 101 a little bit, but I'm going to give you my personal story. So what I did was, at that time, since I was one of the first ones, it was in D.C., and I had gone out to D.C. And it was me and about 15 other young adults or a couple adults, teens, 20s, and we basically got taught on how to explain certain concepts of Hinduism, short, effectively, concisely, and in a way that people are constantly engaged. And at the end, based on what we had learned, we had to give a little presentation on a misconception of Hinduism and give a presentation on how we would explain it. And so my topic was, people ask, do you believe in idol worship? Is that statue, God? And so I explained the difference between that and murti, or a representation of God. And so I gave a little talk, got great feedback, and then at the end, to get my certificate, I had to make a lesson plan. And basically what that lesson plan was is essentially what you would send to a teacher. So on there, I created a worksheet that kids would have to do. I put little sample questions for kids to answer. I gave a little 2-paragraph explanation. And so it was a great way for me to see what teachers are actually using when they teach students. And so I ended up getting my certificate. That's there right there. And now I'm officially certified to teach teachers, which is pretty cool. And so that was basically the first big thing I did. And then after that, I was introduced to the whole DC days. And they talked about that, how we basically talked to elected representatives in the government. And so I went to DC with my dad, to meet my dad. And it was the first time, that I had to wear a suit, for a while. So I walked around with that suit, I had those dress shoes with the little heels at the end and stuff, it was kind of cool. And I would walk around and I did the whole suit pull thing and looked pretty cool. And, so that was the first time, I felt like a real adult. And so I walk into these meetings, right? And before that I was briefed on certain key concepts to talk about. And I walk in, and at first, I was pretty intimidated. I mean, I'm 16 and I'm supposed to go talk to people in the government. I don't know how that was going to turn out. But I walk in and I realize that these guys, their staffers, they were in their 20s, 25, 26, and although they were young, they were very, very smart. And it gave me a lot of confidence in my speaking, and I learned how to talk professionally and concisely to people in the government. And that was one of the greatest opportunities I've ever had, because not many 16-year-olds get to say they went and talked to people on Capitol Hill. And so that was something I thought was very awesome. And the thing is, it wasn't just a one-time thing, because there were follow-ups. And what I mean by that is, quick funny story, I was at home a week later, and I was with my dad, we were sitting on the couch, he was going through the mail. And on one of the envelopes, it said, Mr. Pandit. So my dad's like, oh, that's me, Mr. Pandit. And he took the envelope, and he opens it, and it says, to Vivek Pandit. I said, hey Dad, I'm Mr. Pandit. So I took that envelope. You should see his face, it's so funny. Watch out, Dad, it's me. So I opened it, and it said, it was from a congressman, and it was thank you very much for coming out and explaining, and making a difference in the legislation of Congress. As a 16-year-old, as a youth, you are the future. And knowing that a congressman had not only listened to me, but remembered me and took the time to write a letter and send it to me, personalized, made me realize that although I may be young, we truly are the future. And that's when I realized that the youth really do need to become involved, because we're the ones that are going to make the difference. And so that is the close of my little story, but I hope I inspired all the younger kids out here, and I hope I inspired all the parents to go talk to their kids about it.
And as witnessing Vivek during these C days, I will say it was absolutely adorable. I'm sorry, I will say it. But he